We've got some great sessions coming out today, and that was a brilliant one as well. Tony and Ramnath, really appreciate you sharing your insights with us and what great takeaways. So moving nicely into the next session we've got today, which is a panel session all around visionary women in AI. A real exciting topic and something we all need to be paying attention to at the moment. And we've got some great speakers to be discussing this with you today. So we're very kindly joined by Helen Packard, Lauren Hawker, and Annerie Vreugdenhill. So let's do a quick introduction on who these amazing women are before we get into the session. So Annerie, in 1992, Annerie Vreugdenhill started at ING and held various positions, which revolved around maintaining and expanding relationships with clients in ING's wholesale banking division before being appointed as head of ING Neo and Chief Innovation Officer in 2021, which is awesome to see. In the latter role, she has been able to use her ability to see opportunities in all kinds of situations, to challenge the status quo, and to rethink services and processes. She is responsible for creating impact for ING with many innovations through buy, build, or partner concepts, including responsibility for 300 million venture funds and for the labs in Singapore, London, Brussels, and Amsterdam. Annerie has a great experience in understanding how startups build and how the startups within the ecosystem operate. In addition to her current role, Annerie is the chairperson of the supervisory board of Congo, an ING co-founded DLT-based startup in trade, member of the board and audit and governance committee of R3, a DLT-based software company, and member of the executive advisory board of Squirro, an AI-based software company, which we're all getting acquainted with today. Annerie is married and has two amazing sons. We're really looking forward to having you on this panel, Annerie. So let's look to Lauren. Lauren works as the head of training and education at Squirro and is an avid promoter of an interactively adaptive educational experience. For the past few years, she has been engaged in the field of technology and technology-assisted learning as a leader, learning facilitator, and a global academic content director. With an identified background in corpus linguistics, a budding passion for all things software and language, which remains to this day, Lauren is perfectly suited for this conversation we're going to be having today. And finally, Helen, who is going to be joining this awesome panel, is currently working on the PRA RegTech strategy, delivering a range of ML and AI tools to enable companies' digitalization journey. Helen's career spans over 20 years, initially as a management consultant, then at a major bank, before joining the Bank of England 4 years ago. Helen's typical role is addressing a regulatory change and implementing both technology and cultural change to address today's challenges, which we'll be discussing in this panel. Helen is a real fan of innovation, being led by all aspects of an organization to create new opportunities for change. Helen, Lauren, and Annerie, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Please, the stage is yours. Take it away.
The AI Week 2021 is a virtual summit powered by Squirro. It provides a platform and opportunity for you as participants to step into various discourses and explore the world of AI from different angles. So welcome to this session and to the keynote, Visionary Women in AI. My name is Lauren Hawker Zafer, and I lead the training and education engagements here at Squirro. I am honored to be part of this really exciting event and welcome your engagement warmly. Joining me in this session today are two very successful women, visionaries that are heavily engaged in the field of emerging technologies and passionate champions of change, digital transformation, and innovation. So welcome, Helen, and welcome, Annerie. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share your experiences, perceptions, and advice today, and I'm sure that it's going to be an insightful discussion. In this keynote, Visionary Women in AI, we will focus on current narratives around gender and tech and challenging those through a lens of creating opportunity. So hopefully by the end of the discussion, you will have been able to reflect on setting realistic expectations for the field and how you, as a woman or as a representative of women, can create your own opportunities and opportunities for other females in tech. So before we start, it would be great to find out a little bit about our two guest speakers, Helen and Annerie. So Helen, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Lauren. I'm really excited to be here today. I think we have a great discussion. Thank you for inviting me. My background is both from a management consulting background and working at one of the major UK firms. But, for the last few years, I've been at the PRA in the Bank of England, leading RegTech and delivering both Squirrel and other artificial intelligence solutions and skill set changes. So I'm really excited and very knowledgeable on this area. So I hope to have a good conversation with my colleague Annerie in this panel today.
Wonderful, thank you. And Annerie, would you like to present yourself and introduce yourself as well?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Lauren, and Helen, likewise. It's very exciting to be with you on this panel. So I'm Annerie Vreugdenhill, and I'm the head of ING Neo and the Chief Innovation Officer of ING. And obviously, when you're in innovation, it's largely about tech. So we create software, basically, scalable software in ING Neo. And ING Neo is actually the next step in our innovation journey, where we have created a business line with ING Neo, which is supposed to actually start to book external revenues with our initiatives, which we hope to achieve next year. So it's a very exciting moment and phase in our innovation journey that we're working on, and I'm happy to share some insights from that.
Perfect, thank you. So, in having such successful and inspiring women in front of me, it seems more than fitting that I use this opportunity to really find out more about you and your roles. Now, you as a Chief Innovation Officer, Annerie, and you, Helen, as a Digital Transformation Lead, these roles are both in themselves relatively new. So maybe around the early 2000s, they started to appear, and they are ever, I would say, developing roles. How did you both end up in these roles? And main question would be maybe what inspires you or empowers you about these roles?
Would you want to start, Lauren? I'm happy to take it on, but so let me start.
Sure.
So yeah, it's indeed a relatively new role. I think ING has a Chief Innovation Officer since 7 years or something like that. And actually, when you look at my bio, I have a pretty traditional banker's profile. So I've been in front office roles, relationship management, lending, all kind of structured finance activities for most of my career. So it was, for me, a fantastic opportunity to get into innovation. But what struck me really when I got the role was that so many people said, yes, you're absolutely the right person for this role, and this role fits you completely. And at some stage, so many people said it to me that I started to ask them why they said it. Because if you look at my CV, it wasn't so obvious. And then all of them, so this was also very interesting, they said the same thing. They said, you have always challenged the status quo and you always thought differently. And I think those are indeed elements that you really need when you're in innovation. You have to rethink things and come in from a different perspective to make it successful. And it's nice to see that in an organization like ING, this gets noticed, and that people dare to take the risk with somebody with my profile to still get me into an innovation role. And obviously, I had a couple of touch points before in earlier phases in my career where I'd been very exposed to technology and the big technology decisions. I was in the team that designed and implemented Agile in ING. So I've done a couple of things, and I've created my first innovations when being in the business, but still was quite a very different role, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
And obviously, I mean, you've mentioned that a lot of people picked up on the fact that they said that you were able to sort of challenge this status quo. Do you think that that was something innate in you, or something that you'd nurtured over years, or certain experiences had allowed you to nurture that?
I think it's really who I am. and I'm quite outspoken. So I let it be known that I have a different opinion about stuff. So I think it's really very much who I am. And but I also think, in ING, we have a culture where this is never stopped or seen as difficult or whatever. There's always been room for thinking differently, which then obviously make that you dare to continue doing it, right? It's very important that the culture actually allows you to feel comfortable to do it.
Okay. And what about yourself, Helen?
I think I'm fairly similar to Annerie, that my CV of 10 years in management consulting, doing regulatory change programs, and then 10 years in one of the major UK firms is not an uncommon career. However, what I always felt during those 20 years was I was slightly the odd one, kept coming up with ideas, challenging new things. Everyone's sort of like, you've always got a different idea. What about doing this? And, and trying to find that place. Sometimes it was welcome and sometimes it wasn't. But, that I always felt that we could do more, we could do different, and there was more opportunities. When I joined the Bank of England up till earlier this year, I was in charge of the overall response for Brexit for the PRA. And that required somebody who did think differently, who was able to kind of have a piece of white paper and think of how to navigate this. And I think, going back to what Annerie said, is that these roles, are fairly new, but also that you need people who are different, who can think, who can challenge, who can be creative in their mind. And that's the key thing, is that creativeness, that innovation is just at the core of who you are, and then being able to implement and exploit it.
Would you, in terms of agreement with Annerie, would you also say that it's extremely important that, obviously you've spoken about there was maybe parts of where you were thinking differently and it was a little bit of maybe an odd perspective and you were more challenging, but how important then would you say the environment is?
I would say it's important to have that environment where it does empower people to innovate and come up with new ideas. I think in the last 20 years, the world of working has changed massively, that people are more empowered than they were to suggest new ideas and come up with things. Previously, I would say 20 years ago, it was very hierarchical, so it wasn't so open to that. So I imagine if somebody is starting their career now and perhaps they do think in a more creative way and innovation is at the core, they'd be more open to ideas and not feel maybe so uncomfortable.
And obviously, we've seen that there's a lot of maybe directive that comes from not only environments, but from social media, from mainstream media. It's important that there are champions or challengers or supporters in your own environment. Talking about maybe role models or leaders, and there's a lot of people that place emphasis on ensuring that they have the right leaders in place to create this fertile environment of really ensuring that you can take it up and be yourself and challenge and speak out. Were you both personally maybe inspired by any sort of techpreneurs or female or male leaders, or did you really have that own vision of achievement and desire to transform yourself?
I think if Annerie doesn't mind, I'll go first. That when I joined the Bank of England 4 years ago, I felt that I needed to refresh my skills and be in a more empowering organisation. And joining the Bank of England is very much that sort of place. And I got on very well with our deputy CEO at that point, and he encouraged me to go and do some learning. And I went off and did a part-time master's in entrepreneurism and innovation, which I graduated earlier this year on. And I think he was very much a thinker, and empowered me and encouraged me, in the same with a number of colleagues that I met, to sort of go for it. That being creative, thinking differently is good. And, and they created that environment to give me confidence to do it. And I would say that that's absolutely changed how I believe in myself and think. I think people can do a great deal for people's confidence. And so, as a female, I always try to encourage people, because I know the benefit and the power that you have of being further up the career ladder and influencing people to go and explore themselves.
Yeah, maybe if I can add to that. So I think I don't have a person so much who really inspired me to do it, but what I realized in the last couple of years is, this is obviously a well-known phenomenon, is that millennials are way more purpose-driven than previous generations, and that to attract talent from that group, you as a company really have to change your narrative and your behavior, but it also is the case for you as a leader. And I have seen in myself that, to give an example on this, and this is also very related to AI, so it's probably nice to mention, but like many banks, ING got a big fine at some stage for lagging KYC controls. And obviously this had a huge effect on the firm, and everybody immediately had to be pulled out of regular jobs to get the remediation done and make sure we were okay on this. And I was having innovation teams and AI teams with all kind of millennials. They had come to the job to buy cool new services and products for clients. And I really felt that with especially my AI teams, we could make a huge difference for the way we dealt with anti-money laundering and our controls in that respect. So I really thought I have to, with my teams, take our share of what has to be done. So I wanted to actually assign 70% of my people on this topic. And then I thought by myself, how on earth am I going to tell them this? Because they came in for all the cool stuff. And then I realized that this was my own mindset about it. That actually, if you think deeper and you think about what kind of purpose do we have as a financial institution in society, etc., actually this is part of a place where we can really be at the forefront of making the world a little bit safer. So actually, when I realized that, I realized also that my hesitation to KYC was my own frustration with all the work we had already done, and then still it's not good enough. But that if I reframed it also for myself, that it becomes much more inspiring. So I basically told my teams, listen, those are the numbers on anti-money laundering. Those are the numbers on terrorism financing. Those are the numbers on human trafficking. And this is where we can help to actually detect this and maybe put a little bit of a stop to that. So wouldn't it be great if we can make the world a bit safer? And my people just loved it. They thought it was the coolest assignment they ever had. And I think this is so inspiring for me, also with all the pressure on the business models of the bank, to rethink for myself, what is actually the importance of a bank, and what is our reason for existence really for customers and for society. So I find this generation particularly inspiring.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, I think we've naturally sort of progressed onto sort of expectations from team members. You've mentioned millennials, expectations from the financial institutions, from banks. I'd like to talk a little bit about expectations and pressures, because obviously both of your roles do come with a lot of expectations and pressures. Maybe not obvious, there may be some that are certainly invisible and that you can give us a little bit of insight into. So there are many reasons, obviously, why digital transformation and innovation are important, and you would both be the right people to ask about these reasons. But if we're forefront in the increase in importance and requirements for roles like your roles, as well as change and innovation itself, how do you think expectations have evolved, and what role does technology play in this sort of evolution?
I think yes, it definitely has evolved, especially with all the new technologies, right? And up to a point where also expectations sometimes are a bit unrealistic. And so, for certain problems, we have heard people, and sorry, Helen, but regulators say, but you've got AI, so why can't you do this? And then I'm like, hey, do you have any idea how complicated this is and what kind of infrastructure you actually have to build in an institution, and then still have to find the logic on top of it, etc., etc. So I think expectations have sometimes to be a bit unrealistic, and on the otherwise, the opportunity is obviously tremendous. It's really huge, and but it's a step-by-step approach. There's a lot of infrastructure to build. You really have to organize your data to make use of it. You have to do it in the right way. So you have to be able to explain what you've been doing. You have to have consent where necessary. So there's a lot that you have to organize for before you can start. And then I think the next challenge is really, and I think this is a very well-known topic in AI, but to make sure that as much as you can, you prevent having biases in your models. And that is something, one of the reasons why we are super keen on broad diversity in our teams. So when we do peer reviews of our models, that we actually have lots of people from very different backgrounds, nationalities, gender, to simply get as many views in as possible to hopefully prevent a little bit bias. I don't think you can ever totally prevent it, but it's very important that you do that, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right about the bias point. It is difficult. I mean, we talk a lot about data ethics in the organization when you're having computers give you or make decisions for you. And that has many aspects on what you do and how you move as an organization. And it's something that is evolving every day. So it's quite hard to kind of keep on top of it and learn. I think also in terms of expectations, there's a lot of concerns from people about, oh, the robots are going to take over our job, which is always one of those points. But then also that AI can solve everything. And we know it can't, and it certainly can't today. So there is kind of that realistic view that there is progress. It is interesting. There are some real changes and benefits. However, some of them are grand, but a lot of them are small but important changes. And as you keep doing it, that's when you start to evolve. So I think it's just trying to kind of ensure that people don't think, oh, you press a button and the computer does everything for you and that's it now, because that certainly isn't the answer.
Okay, so I mean, there obviously seems to be in that sense some maybe slight frustrations or fears. I mean, you've mentioned about the sort of common misconception that robots are going to come in and they're going to take over our jobs, or expectations around AI that it can fix everything. And I think as well, like if going back to the roles itself that you both embody, there's a lot of pressures that come with it. I mean, if we just steer that sort of insight from connotations around the word transformation, change, innovation. I mean, before it used to be quite a negative, there was a negative connotation around innovation and change and transformation. It was all disruptive, but now it's extremely positive. In females, looking from a perspective of women that want to go into this sector, or women that want to create their own expectations around the pressures in that field, what would you say to women? I mean, how can they set their own realistic expectations of these roles and really try to develop and empower themselves to prepare themselves for the challenges?
I think you should be confident in who you are. Everybody has different skills, different experiences, no matter what your age, no matter what your background or education. And sometimes we don't realize that we have these and how beneficial they are. So I think it's about being confident in who you are, because everybody has something to help, to bring to the table. And I think it's thinking about that and being able to articulate it and make it relevant to the discussion. And those are really important things. I think that women in particular have a different lens on topics. So one of my areas that we're doing is digital skills. So how to reskill and upskill the entire workforce. And perhaps as a female, I might have a different lens to a man or somebody else. So I think that we have different experiences and we should embrace it. We should be excited about it. And as you say, innovation is no longer a negative connotation. It's a positive thing. People aren't running out behind, when they hear about innovation, they're running towards innovation because they can see that we are in the technical revolution. We are in this revolution and the world is changing. So the best thing is to embrace and move forward, which may be needing to be a bit brave, but there is a lot of exciting changes that are coming.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's really embrace the change. And also, I think also women should realize that they may think this is just techie and that, you know, you will be behind a laptop all the time. But I think the impact you can have on people's lives with technology is enormous. And if you start thinking from that perspective, I think it is something that fits women really, really well. And like I said earlier, it's so important that we have diversity in teams so that we build the right sort of technology that actually help people rather than frustrate people. I would really encourage women to simply jump in and take the opportunity, because it's absolutely so exciting.
Excellent. Let's follow up on that thread, Annerie, of diversity, and certainly in making sure that we can create that opportunity for diversity. So we're all familiar with the prominent and immensely important, and that's why we're highlighting the narrative that circles around the necessity to pave a road for women, and more women, not necessarily just women, but more women in tech. And also the paramount importance of diversity, especially as we've been talking about in AI and in AI teams, to sort of minimize biases in AI itself. And this is no longer a secret. We're witnessing a thrilling, as you've mentioned as well, Helen and Annerie, and really tech-fueled era with intensified, I certainly feel that it is an intensified momentum for tech transformation. And obviously post-COVID-19, this has accelerated the momentum. And with this, I'd like to start to challenge this narrative through the lens of taking action, creating opportunity, nurturing talent and empowerment, and really grabbing the bulls by the horn and how women can do this themselves and for other women. So I'd like to reflect a little bit. I mean, you're both, as we can see it on the sign there, female leaders. You embody a lot of different roles. You're women in tech, you're women in finance, you're visionaries, inspirations. A lot of people might comment that it's not a lack of capability that's holding women back, but it's a dearth of opportunity, that there's uneven access or maybe a disproportion of distribution of information. There's maybe a large number of men that are in C-suite positions, and they claim that women are left with fewer opportunities to really gain that experience that they need to climb the ladder. What are your thoughts on that? Can I open up this question and point of view?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it has gotten a lot better since I started in finance. So I really think there's way more women around me than when I started, when I was really always the only female, which now is actually rare that I'm in a big meeting and I'm the only woman. So I think it has progressed a lot. And I think also the drive of especially I think in financial services of leaders to appoint women is really there and is quite strong. And then, yeah, you know, in the end, and that is very often a little bit still the more difficult part of it, is you simply have to appoint women. So we can talk about it forever, but that's what needs to happen. And that has two sides, I think. One is that you know, that it's simply human nature that you feel more comfortable with people who look like you. And I experience it myself as well. So this is not scientifically researched by me, but this is my own experience. So, you know, I've been in banking for 30 years now or so, and literally at the first stages of my career, I was always the only woman. So I have an unbelievable amount of experience in talking to men. I at home have a husband and two sons. I just talk to men. So I would easily say I've had 95% or so of my conversations in the past 20, 30 years with men and very little with women. And still, if I speak to a woman, if I get a female candidate for a role, it immediately clicks. I immediately have the impression that we're on the same page, that we understand each other, and it feels super comfortable. So if I have that with all my experience talking to men and very little experience talking to women, think about how it is for men who also largely speak to men, already by nature feel more comfortable. So it's really something you have to, it's a pattern you have to break very much on purpose, because otherwise if you allow yourself to go into your comfort zone, you will hire people who look like you. And I think where women can also play a role is make sure you're visible. So women tend to, when it's busy, skip the network drinks. But that is the moment where people remember, oh yeah, she's there as well. Oh yeah, she could actually be the one going for a certain role.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that, the world has changed a lot. There's a lot more women in finance these days, and you do have that sort of instant connection, I think, but in a way you do have to break the rules. There are more and more women being, with C-suite jobs, there's more and more women being senior. But I think that, yes, time is improving, but the more that we have, when you're fortunate to be, where we are, is to encourage more women to go up, to be, at the top of their game and push them. So we have a responsibility as well as female leaders to encourage other females, whether they want to go up or they want to go in different directions, but, whatever they are, we have a responsibility to enable them.
So what about other leaders that are responsible for ensuring that other women have similar opportunities, similar experiences? What would you maybe give as a piece of advice for other leaders that are trying to improve access for other females in their teams to information, to opportunity, to expertise that really might help foster this opportunity?
I don't think there is a black and white answer to this, or an answer that fits everything. I think a lot of it is about some women often don't go for roles perhaps because they only have 8 out of the 10 requirements and they don't feel confident enough. So it's creating that environment that women say, okay, I only have 8 out of the 10, but I'm going to go for it. And being able to go for it is a big thing, and feeling that that is something that would be acceptable is a big thing. And then the other part of the equation is someone looking at it going, actually, they've got 8 out of the 10. But looking at the CV, they have got the other 2 things. They just don't call it that, or they can get those 2 things. So I think it's a responsibility on both sides to enable people to think they can do it, and the other people to go, okay, let's see what we can do. And sometimes women have 11 out of 10 things, but still, for whatever reason, don't get there. So it's just trying to create those opportunities that we go, what about her to do it? And that's the question that we have to answer.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Helen. And also what I've learned is that it really helps to put some structure behind it. So we started a couple of years, or quite a few years back already, by, for instance, training the men on exactly this point. That if they want to approach a woman for a role, that they have to encourage her to say, you know what, you have 8 out of 10, and the other 2, I know you will learn very, very fast because you've always been a fast learner. So that you give her the confidence at the start before she gets nervous about it. But also we have things like, we try to always have in our interview panels, always a female on a panel to make sure that you, again, get the biases out a little bit. We make sure we always have women on the shortlist, and we at least interview the woman. So there's a bit of structured process around it as well, which really helps. So that's definitely advice I would give organizations to do.
Would you? I mean, we've spoken about the human centricness of being in an interview situation, and maybe mirroring a connection, both from a male and female perspective. What about bringing data into this equation? Do you think that it would help to add a little bit structure through data-driven processes to use data to provide opportunity and diversity?
It's an interesting one. So I've seen in innovation, I've seen very innovative things where they used data even from neurological kind of patterns, etc., to match people to the right job. And there's stuff that I think that starts to get a bit creepy, and other things where the results are truly impressive. So it's definitely also something, if your models are right, that can prevent some biases. But if your models are wrong, can even make the biases stronger than they are in the human's mind. And I think that's a little bit problem with it. If you start to program this kind of stuff, everybody brings their own biases. So if you get a bias in a model and then use that as a selection tool, it could work the other way.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a really fine line, and you can't apply data to every scenario. Data can help, but you have to be careful how you use that data, how you gather it, what the context is, and how you apply it. So as ever, we use data in most of our lives in many different ways, but there's always at least two ways to look at every statistic. You can turn it around to your different perspectives. So I think it's just trying to make sure that you use and gather and exploit that information on the best possible way.
Insightful. I think I'd like to sort of bring the discussion to an end on something a little bit more profound, or something that you can ponder yourselves. Is there a lesson that you've learned that you would like to share with our audience, in particular females, women?
That's a very big question.
It's a big question to end the discussion. It's the showstopper.
I think my bit of advice is to be confident in who you are and find fellow colleagues, male or female, and build that support, build that network, because work is hard, but when you have friends who are with you, who support you, no matter where they work, it makes life a lot more fun, but also you could go quite far up if you have that right environment, both at work and at home. So, feel empowered, feel confident, and it's amazing what you can achieve.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Helen. And I think the other one that I would like to add is it also can help to show some vulnerability. So if you are uncertain about something, or whether you can, on how you should approach something, very often people are very, very willing to help you. Men are very willing to help you. Other females are very willing to help you, contrary to the common belief. So if you just open up on I find this hard, or I struggle with this, or I don't know how to approach it, people will normally really help you. So I think really finding your trusted network and starting to really trust people to help you is another thing that I would recommend to people in general, but women in particular.
Excellent. It's really been wonderful to have these first-hand insights from you both. It's a very interesting environment that you're both working in, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are participating in this event that have taken something away today. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and we're certainly at an end. So I'd like to thank you for your participation. And I hope you both enjoyed it yourselves. Thank you, Annerie, and thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.